If you're listening to this, you found a transmission from the bunker codes. None of this is medical, dental, vision, legal, financial, or any other advice about anything. We're all on the same team and just want to be left alone. Enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk, and you're gonna listen. Chance Paladin. None of this is any advice about anything. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that. And the first thing I want to say is, well, how how are my projects doing? And so, Ghost Company 2, it's floating around 80% done. Just deciding exactly how I want to wrap it up, the final act. And I'm still, if you're on my coffee page, you've seen the doodles that are going into the eventual art book, the final drafts, the final copies of the paperback new covers. About 80% of those are done. Just about. I had to take like 2 months off from that because work was just too crazy. But I'm back on track with that now, and that's kind of where we're at. So I haven't had any book sales really in a couple months. So as usual, it's the coffee folks that are keeping the lights on regarding keeping the motivation going. So that's helped to start purchasing like the coffee mug stuff to eventually make coffee mugs. We're about halfway done purchasing coffee, the different parts we need to make proper coffee mugs. It's quite an investment. So we were buying the different pieces as they were on sale over the holidays, and we got about halfway there. But we have to take care of our vehicles and glasses and dental and stuff too. So it's a lot of competing priorities, and have to get 3 windows fixed also because they're leaking and causing rot and mold. So that's all the house cleaning out of the way. And I guess if I had to be thankful for something, obviously, thankful for this house and the homestead and all the massive outpouring of support. Doing it all on our own would have been I don't know how it would have gone without the encouragement. And I think it's been really helpful for everybody else too, all the encouragement that everybody's able to provide. And even though it doesn't seem like we're really making any progress on a wider aspect, if you were to keep a spreadsheet of how many people were able to move into better circumstances, maybe not the best, but at least making incremental progress. Just me, I'm aware of at least 5 or 6, 7, 8 people that were able to, within the last 2 years, able to get new places and get moved out. So, or at least start getting their backup properties worked on. So some of them we've helped directly, and some of them just tried to cheer them on and help them make good decisions, not get wrapped up in the moment, not get taken advantage of. And a topic of a future podcast is going to be kind of explaining our journey through the last 2 or 3 collapses, because, you know, stateside we're averaging like a collapse every 4 years now. And when I was in college in the mid-aughts, the mid-00s, going through my 3rd college, I didn't believe the guy when he told the class that the economic conditions were cyclical, you know, and he didn't. I've brought this up before. I think he wasn't like spot on, but he was kind of close, and I think I rejected his theory and principle because I'm still under the illusion, or at least I was at the time, that incremental growth can go on forever. Sometimes it can. It's just rare, and it almost never happens now because everything is so artificially manipulated, the economy more so, and that's probably going to be the bulk of this episode. So if you're already tired of hearing me talk about the economy, then I don't know what to tell you. It's insanely important though, because the economy is like the big fog of war is the economy. It has to do with commercial real estate, residential 15-minute cities, and crypto and digital currency and everything. And whenever the economy dumps, it's people with money that are able to make really, really big moves while everybody else struggles. And it's a really dirty way that everything happens. And it's why you have to have the methods and the means to make moves regardless of if the market's up or down. And next year a lot's changing. So there's a bill going through in Oregon where they can finally start changing commercial to residential without a lot of the red tape and stuff. I still think that's going to be hard because I don't know how they're going to do the bathrooms. That's the main thing that is the number one problem with switching commercial over to residential, is the bathroom situation. So we'll see how they deal with that. But I was thinking about that and I'm like, well, that might employ a lot of commercial contractors. I don't know. There's also a virus going around Portland that is a very, very gross virus. And a lot of people have likened it to dysentery. If you ever played that old Oregon Trail video game, it's called, but this virus is called Shigella, which is a bacteria. It's a very, very, very disgusting virus that's going around Portland and in large parts of the homeless population and hygiene specifically. And these are the kinds of things we're going to see. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see new biological issues, and I think we're going to see new chemical issues. I think the fentanyl situation is going to get even worse, and I think fentanyl is going to get more weaponized. The protests are going to get worse. The news hasn't talked about it at all. But if you go on Twitter there's footage just in the last couple days of like protests and riots all over the US over Christmas. To, you know, where the people have the holiday lights, you know, lighting the Christmas trees, trying to do their Christmas shopping, you name it. And I thought there was going to be like a little reprieve, but a part of me was like, no, I have a feeling that's all a psyop. So they're trying to, they said they were going to try to make Christmas safer, at least the Christmas shopping safer, by deploying more police officers. But I mean, if there's 1,000 people walking around, that's just not going to cut it. Two officers isn't going to cut it if there's 1,000 people marching around, and it only takes 3 or 4 of them with hammers to wipe a store out in like 2 seconds. And it might seem like I'm lumping all those people in together, but I'm not. I know that there's peaceful pro-Hamas protesters. I know there's peaceful pro-Palestine protesters. I know all that. But if you think about it like a natural disaster, you know, moving around, you know, some parts of the natural disaster don't hurt anything, and you have to treat the whole with the sum of its parts. If you need to be aware of what could potentially happen in a situation, which always the answer is to always get yourself and your loved ones out of there. And if you can't avoid it entirely, stay as far away as you can. Get out. Don't linger. Don't hang around. Follow, you know, your gut instincts and just get out. So certainly don't try to intervene. It's just property. And I know it sounds like, you know, people say, well, it's just property, but human life is more important. That stuff can be rebuilt. I'm not saying insurance will cover it. That's not what I'm saying, because I know that's not true, but what I'm saying is just get out. And they're going to keep trying to cover these up, but things in Palestine aren't changing. And pro-Hamas sentiment is growing as all of the other identity groups piggyback and unite on it. And honestly, just a lot of what's going on is not making the news. They've already started hunting teachers down. They've already started hunting students down. And I don't know what to say or do about it, except just to tell everybody to get out and stay safe. And there may be some people, oh, there's bad actors on the other side, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Okay, well, when those people have mobs that are causing natural disaster style chaos, it doesn't matter who it is, right? A tornado's a tornado. You know, tsunami. I don't ask a hurricane what its identity politics are. I just get out, no matter what. I don't stick around to see who's protesting. I don't go ask them what their flag means, you know. Or, you know, I don't ask them where they fall on the range of how far they want to exterminate a certain group of people, whatever group that is. I just don't stick around. I don't care. I don't want to know. I just want to get out of there. And so unfortunately, all of those things are combining into a big tornado, hurricane. And there was like, I can only tell you like what happened in, a big city here in the Pacific Northwest, because that's where I focus, and Portland and Seattle are like the two easiest. So there was like 3 deadly accidents. Or accidents. There was 3 deadly car collisions, I think, in the span of like 24 hours, and multiple fatal stabbings, like on Christmas Eve. And then you've got fentanyl, and you've got this virus I was telling you about, and you've got riots and protests, and there isn't enough law enforcement anymore, period. When these protests really kick off, when they realize that there's nobody to stop them, and Generation X is tired of getting blamed for everything, you're not going to see anybody standing up to them. They're going to have free reign, because everybody who tried to stand up to them got demonized and villainized. And they said, oh, well, it takes 2 to tangle. Oh, conservatives are coming in, and conservatives are causing all this. Completely victim blaming, first of all. And second of all, like, they were attacking Christians that were just there to pray. They attack everybody for every reason. If you don't fully align with them, they attack you. And everybody who stood up to them got villainized and vilified. And they broke the back of law enforcement. Federal has no reason to go there without a commander-in-chief that's willing to lose the optics on it. The governor's not going to call the National Guard because of the optics, and it's going to be 4 years ago and 8 years ago all over again. I've been writing about this in my books for like 5, 6, 7 years now. I can't even remember when I started writing them, and it's the same thing every 4 years. And I don't know, logistics is still hosed, the supply chain is still hosed. Like, we're not in a better position now. Arguably, in almost every way, we're in a worse position. When you have to have a real ID to log onto the internet, like, that's going to be it. The flow of information, of actionable, real information, is going to be almost non-existent without radios. So in early 2024, if one of your goals isn't to get a pretty decent radio system set up, you're going to be hurting for intel, actionable local intel, because they can make everything on YouTube disappear or make it impossible to search for. Even things on Twitter, like, they can make things impossible to search for. Musk is controlled opposition at best. Like, yeah, Alex Jones is back on the platform, which is great, but they can snap their fingers and shut Twitter down. You could try to roll it over to Starlink, but I mean, we have Starlink satellites that fly right over us, but I can't afford it. So it's a challenge, right? And they were supposed to have 2 different phone carriers, or at least phone manufacturers were supposed to have at least text over satellite by now, and it hasn't happened. So on top of that, you have the fact that they can shut down your 2A rights simply by blocking imports. And a huge chunk of states are already on the back foot about that. And I wanted to do a completely separate YouTube video explaining some 2A stuff, because I realized A, a lot of people I think got new firearms for Christmas, and B, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. And I feel like I kind of want to explain like firearms for dummies. Unfortunately, a lot of the gun tubers have turned out to be psyops. And it's really, really sad. They're almost all controlled opposition now, bought and paid for by people who do not have our best interests in mind when it comes to 2A. So, our First Amendment's under attack, our Second Amendment's under attack. And even though there's some really good legal structure, legal decisions that have been made over how the Second Amendment should be interpreted, unfortunately, state-wise, a lot of states are just ignoring it. And they're saying that the statistics are way higher than they actually are. And I used to use kind of the example of, they'd stop caring about ARs if aliens came down and gave us all laser weapons. But then I realized that the way the judgments have been written lately, like laser weapons, like in Borderlands, those kinds of laser weapons, not the Star Wars ones. I mean like laser railguns that were portable. If something like that happened, the Second Amendment wouldn't cover that, because it would be considered an unusual weapon that's not in common use. It could be unusual and potentially dangerous. Let's say if the laser rifle emitted a bunch of dangerous radiation or something. So it would be an interesting argument, though, if the military switched to laser weapons. But that goes back to the whole argument of when Ding Dong said, well, what do you need rifles for? You can't fight tyranny with rifles because jets and bombs and stuff. But then they turn around and they go, what do you need those for? Hunting deer with Kevlar? And that's how the lefty-loos do that. They argue both sides at the same time and contradict themselves, then they sit back and act smart like they won, and it's like they prove their own point, but they're too stupid to see it. Or maybe it's all by design. But smash that like button and leave a comment down below if you'd like me to do a YouTube video of guns for dummies. I notice I've been answering a lot of questions lately. The most common question I've been seeing it on Twitter, and it's usually by women, and they're asking, wouldn't it make more sense for women to have pistols for self-defense instead of rifles? And I always tell them, actually rifles have less recoil, and they're actually easier to use, and they're more accurate than a modern pistol. And they don't. I think they're like, why? That doesn't make any sense. Rifles are bigger. And I explained the whole thing to them, and they seemed to be really thankful. I think if you take the fear, out of firearms, people seem to, well, if they talk to a calm, rational person about it. So, I don't know. Alright, so what else is on the list to talk about? I've got my list here. I was going to talk about plagiarism, but I don't want to. A certain college person got nailed with plagiarism, and then they're trying to say like that it wasn't it wasn't like malicious plagiarism or some insane thing like that. I'll comment on it, on the specifics more, if there's actually some kind of official, what's the word I'm thinking of? School level official, not scholar, education. I don't know. I just think it's funny because not only the advent of AI, but just like I got nailed with plagiarism once in college, and you get, and I think like that's why I resonated a lot with the story, because they cited all the rules of the college, basically zero tolerance policy, blah 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 blah. And I remember it was basically like 2 strikes and you're out for us. Yet there was your first strike, and if it happened again, you were blacklisted and like lost all your credits or something. It was horrible. It was brutal. And I got accused. And my friend got accused. And then we found out that like 6 other people got accused, all on the same night, on like the same assignment. And so they're like 8 of us got plagiarism strikes on code, software code, to code an absolutely basic program. And there was no appeal process. And the teacher, educator, facilitator was childhood friends for his entire life with the dean. It was the most stacked up bullcrap, easily top 5 most effed up things I've ever had to deal with in my life, like an administrative perspective. And he had left the room to go do something. And that's kind of how we'd found out that I think essentially like the entire class, but 2 people got hit with plagiarism for the software, which is impossible. It is impossible that it happened. Impossible. And that stayed on my record the whole time. And they even had the other group that this happened to was even trying to record him to try to fight this, and they had recordings of him actually telling them to just copy paste the code and work on it, which is not what we did. But that's what they did. Maybe. I don't actually know. But they had recordings of him saying that, and they still got nailed. We got nailed too. And we're just like, our code's not the same. It's different code. It's in different orders, and everything's named different. Like, the UI is different. Like, no, he was hell-bent that we'd plagiarized this code. And it's so funny because, I coded for years and years and years and years and years after that, after I graduated, and coded for years and years and years, and like, once you've coded in object-oriented programming and you learn to code by the standardized way that most reasonable people learn to code, everybody's code looks exactly the same. Because you declare your objects the same and everything's in the same order. Your logic's the same. At least if you're making like basic stuff. Otherwise, you would never be able to read through anyone's code and figure out what the hell they're doing. Sure, there's some people that don't know what they're doing and their code looks like spaghetti, or once 2, 3, 4 people have coded on the same project that looks like spaghetti, but for the most part, everybody's code I've ever read looks the same. They declare their objects and their public classes and private classes, and then they start framing out what everything's going to do. It's just, that always stuck with me, and so whenever I hear people getting treated differently on plagiarism, especially now with AI, I just laugh. Because maybe I just had, one bad experience, and maybe most people don't have to experience that, but it's one thing to, like, lift words out of something that aren't in your vocabulary. I remember from the 7th grade, I think I was doing like a paper on Da Vinci, and I remember reading through the encyclopedia, and it was talking about how he was like an accomplished artist or something like that. And I didn't know what that word meant yet, so I looked it up. And I'm like, well, I can see why they would use that word. Like, that word describes it. And I liked that word. I'm like, I'm going to use that word. And then, yeah, it seemed, I think the teacher had thought that I had plagiarized it, but she made me do, or he or she made me redo my presentation. And, since I actually knew what I was talking about and I hadn't plagiarized it, I had done a bunch of research because I thought Da Vinci was really cool. And so, like, I think that's the right way to handle it. Like, this coding teacher should have had me recode the app. He should have told me, like, recode the app some other way. I would have been like, okay, I guess. Like, It doesn't matter, you're just declaring a bunch of objects and then doing a bunch of math, but like, how many different ways can you do that? Clearly the answer is probably only two, since there was two groups of us and we both got nailed for it. So I really struggled. I struggled in that class because that was my first assignment that happened, and I think that psyched me out really bad. And I really, really struggled in that class because of it. But I ended up learning how to code anyway. But I think maybe the wider point is like, all these high up mucky mucks, they all plagiarize their speeches. And I don't know why they think that they can get away with it. They all have their own phrasing and their own little catchphrases that they use. I don't know why they steal other people's. But it has got me thinking, in my books that draw a lot of inspiration, like, not just lifting like word for word. Like, I was listening to a movie and they were talking about paranoia and they said paranoia something something something. I'm like, oh, that would sound cool in my book. There was another one that said freedom something something something. I was watching something else or reading something else. I was like, freedom something something something. I was like, oh, that'd sound cool in my book. But I'm like, but you know what? Even though it sounds cool, it's not really the tone. But then again, if you're trying to write your characters as to how other people would talk, you don't want every single one of your characters to talk like you. So it's kind of an interesting conundrum that I still haven't quite figured out yet. So my voice is starting to give out because I didn't have a bunch of tea prepared again. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. I think I'm going to save my last topic for later. I know this probably wasn't the action-packed spicy meatball that everybody was anticipating, expecting. I don't know. I have a big topic I want to talk about, but my head also hurts really bad. And I thought it was like 10, but it's actually 1:15 in the morning. I don't know how I got from 10 p.m. to 1:15 a.m. Well, I think I do. But it's okay. I think the short version is, try to be right with your neighbors. Try to stick together, and don't, if you know you're on the right path, don't let people get in your way. Because next year is going to be very, very, very hard. There's going to be a lot of bad things coming together next year. And I think I'll close with this. Like, it's not narcissism, not pessimism, or not all those other words that I can't think of right now. Nihilism. It's not nihilism. It's not me wishing that bad things are going to happen or hoping for some giant collapse. I want everything to be fine and I want everyone to be left alone. But the reality is that they're trying to force everybody back into the office. And the infrastructure's not there to keep everybody safe. And I feel like they're just going to throw everybody to the wolves. And it's a doom loop. They think that they can fix it. They think they can fix crime by throwing people at it, but if you go look at the state of the subway systems in New York, those are full of people, and crime is rampant. It's not rampant because lack of people. The crime is rampant because every time somebody tries to intervene, the people who try to stop it, the people who try to intervene and save and protect people and be sheepdogs, are the ones that always get thrown in jail indefinitely. They vilify anybody who is trying to say that there's a problem. But the normies are waking up, and they are more dangerous than any group because they're unpredictable. They don't prepare. They don't have measured responses. They don't plan. They don't train. They don't know how to handle their shit. And when the facade comes down and the normies realize that nobody's going to come save them, even though they're the ones that voted for this, don't tell me they didn't, because they did. Or through sheer apathy let it happen. It's going to be dangerous. In a city full of normies that wake up and realize they've been screwed, nobody's going to want to be around for that. And so, train, practice, prepare, medical supplies, and modern ways of defending yourself, and radios, and I'll extrapolate it more later if this video gets enough views and likes and stuff. If anybody actually cares, I feel like I'm talking into the void. I don't think these videos will reach the people that they need to reach, but at least I can feel like I've tried. But the cities are going to be really bad. You can't go into the city to shop if there's a killer on the loose that killed somebody and shot somebody and left him in the parking lot of the place that you want to go shop. You can't go shop if you're unfortunately one of the multiple millions of people that are the victims of these cars that can be broken into and stolen in 2 seconds. You can't go to the grocery store and shop anymore if you own certain vehicles, because it takes 2 seconds to break into them and your vehicle's gone. They can drive off with no key, with multiple models of vehicles now. And they want you to go shop at the grocery store and go shop at the mall, but oh, by the way, there's 3,000 people marching through the mall, and the mall opened, and there's 3 guys with hammers, 5 guys with hammers smashing their way into the brand new jewelry store. They just don't want you to talk about it. And I'm by no means suggesting that something should be done about this. I'm suggesting that everyone needs to get the hell out. Not because I'm a nihilist and I want the whole thing to crash, because I don't. And a lot of people are saying that, they switched their philosophies as soon as they had kids. But I can tell you this, if you have kids, you still need to be focused on getting out. You can't just wish or hope that things are going to get better. And I don't see a way to vote your way out of this either, because you can't hire enough police now, even if you wanted to. You can't hire and train them. It would take forever. You can't you can't get all the ones back that you had. Most of them are retired, or there's all kinds of like Rona issues with, certain mandates. And then even if you had enough cops, like, you don't have enough ICE agents. Even if you fix the border, there's not enough ICE agents. Like, even if they balance the budget, there's not enough economy. Like, this is it. The shutdowns are coming, both on the federal level and the state level and the city and the municipality, and thinking that some good old boys somewhere are going to come magically save everything. They're not. They're not, because 4 years and 8 years ago, everybody saw what happened. So if you don't support your local sheriff, and if you don't support your local folks that you got into office, like, you're not going to have a tight-knit enough group and support structure for if the good old boys need to come bail your town out. Like, all of your political infrastructure and your mindset has to all be in place to have the right conditions for you to be able to defend your town and city. Or you're going to end up like all of the other sheepdogs who tried to defend left-leaning cities where corrupt DAs hung their cities out to dry and just let the woke mobs take over. And you might not think that your teeny tiny city's getting subverted, but I can tell you during election time is the perfect time for your little itty bitty city, especially if there's a new immigrant community that gets dropped there, like a homeless camp. But imagine all the same ethnicity, and imagine if something happens to where they can vote, which is happening, where they all say the right thing and the lefty-loos all vote for them. You lose your little town in 2 seconds, right out from under you, because you didn't get your ass in to figure out what was going on. And your little community all of a sudden is being led by someone from some other country that came in or flew in or drove in or snuck in unvetted. And you don't think that can happen, but it can happen. Your little towns aren't that safe. You need to be prepared and aware of what's going on, and you have to have all of the structure. You have to have all the structure in place to be able to defend your town. That means you all have to be on the same page, all the way up and down the line, so your little town can't get overthrown. It can happen. There could be, and I'm not saying like immigrants are bad. I'm talking about forces of nature. Because actually it could happen with homeless people too. When they dispersed all the RVs in the city, all those RVs had to go somewhere, so I'm referencing these like forces of nature. XYZ country sends a ton of people here and they all claim asylum because they're asylum seekers. And all of a sudden your little dinky town has 4,000 asylum seekers. which is only a day's worth in one of multiple southern border crossings, or fly in on planes, all of a sudden you got 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 of a certain ethnicity, and you've got your town of just a couple hundred. Now, I've talked to some people where their town really is in the middle of absolute nowhere and there's no way for buses to get to them, but if you're on a main highway, main freeway, they could bus a couple thousand people in, and your little dinky-donk town with only one general store could all of a sudden be completely overrun. They might not all be bad people. They might all be good people. They might even align with you. You never know. But if you don't figure out, like, if there's going to be a power vacuum and warlords are going to move in, or if it's going to start, if they're going to start harboring traffickers, depending on how corrupt the upstream and downstream is, like, you've got to figure that out. You might be really lucky. Some places are going to be really lucky. You're going to get a bunch of some group that just perfectly aligns with you, and you're all going to be great, and you're going to have an insanely strong community. There's other communities where it might be a little neutral. The group you get might get a little neutral, or they might be like 50-50, and you have to make sure the conservative parts of the group, the conservative voices, don't get wiped out. But you could get a group that is extremely incompatible, and that has been happening all over the world. And if you end up with a group that's extremely incompatible, you're going to have to come up with some real solutions really fast, or unspeakable horrors could happen. Because there are groups that are incompatible. They don't like to talk about that. And I mean diametrically opposed. You have people running around preaching full-on extermination. And you're going to have to figure out a peaceful solution that's a win-win for everybody, where everybody gets along and sings Kumbaya. But it all starts with just being aware and, talking to your neighbors, like, and if all of a sudden you see tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of buses dropping people off, or if you see tons and tons and tons of trailers, you gotta have a conversation about how to peacefully coexist, and have the methods and means and honest communication with the right, leadership in your local area to peacefully, amicably figure it out. And I think that's as good as we're gonna get tonight. How you decide to form that group and what you decide to base that group off of is up to you. But the most important thing is that you find common ground. You find reasons to be on the same team, and don't look for reasons to divide. And if people are suggesting to divide, you usually know where the problem is, but it is super late. It got really late. I appreciate you all, and thanks for all you wonderful coffee supporters. If you like this type of content, check out my coffee page. It helps a lot when my sales of my books slump down. So I appreciate you all, and good night. Bye-bye.
This is the end of the Bunker Codes transmission. Please tune in again, stay kind to each other. We're all on the same team. 73s. Bunker Code clear.